was extremely frustrated. I left. My very first bird walk, I dipped. I went because I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel like, anybody was even trying to assist me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the conversations that were being had were, I was able to be a part because the age gap, the age difference.
Right.
So I ended up going mammal tracking with this volunteer at the refuge, and he sat down and showed me, like it was just us. He was very patient and just taught me a lot of stuff that I felt like the birders weren't doing. So my first experience bird watching, I actually left and decided that it was not for me.
Welcome to The Technical Creative, a show by STEMedia that centers on career development and growth in both the technical and creative spaces. I am your host, Dr. Nehemiah Mabry, and my guest today is Deja Perkins. She's going to talk about what life was like as a young Black girl growing up in Chicago and how she got into wildlife. She's going to talk about the intersection between environmental justice and conservation. And if you want to find out what bird just might work for the CIA, stay tuned here on The Technical Creative. I am with the urban ecologist. The urban ecologist. That's who you are. That's your title. What does that mean? How is that different from a regular ecologist, really quick?
Yeah, so I focus on the city. I focus on urban environments. I think traditionally ecology focuses on places that are far away, untouched from people.
Yep.
There's this whole idea that nature is supposed to be this untouched, pristine place that, far away from people. And that's traditionally what ecology was, like looking at how the environment works, how the ecosystem works apart from people.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't realize is that people are a part of the ecosystem.
True.
And we are a huge driver of change. And we impact everything in our environment. So you have to look at how the ecosystem functions with people.
Right.
And so that's what I study, how people impact the environment and the planet, and how the environment impacts people as well.
Right. And we, as a species, we're probably one of the more impactful or most impactful species, right? Just because of how much we do. We build, everything, right? Like we kind of poke and prod the world around us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's the physical manipulations. And if we think about like long time ago and think back to, not even long time ago, just think about indigenous practices.
Yep.
They've been taking care of the earth and being stewards of the earth for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, even that, like the manipulation of fire and how they take care of their like prairie ecosystems, that is a way that we manipulate the environment for good. But we also manipulate the environment for bad and greed and capitalism. Just thinking about like all the pollution and things like that we've put into the atmosphere as well. So I think it's definitely a double-edged sword, and you kind of have to have this positive outlook and mindset, to really think about, okay, how can we incorporate people and nature to create this like
harmony.
Ideal future, right? Where people and nature can live in harmony, because that's what it's supposed to be, rather than us just coming in and destroying and capitalizing and, conquering this like colonial way that we view.
Conquering nature,
nature.
Allies. Let's be allies with nature. Let's be allies,
let's be one.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: how does a Chi-Town girl even get into wildlife and nature? You're from Chicago, from the city, so it makes sense for you to be an urban ecologist. But like, what was sort of that spark? You just walked outside and was like, man, I need to see some stuff. Like, what was it?
Not even, because there wasn't a lot of nature where I grew up. I had a park about 10 minutes from me, but it was definitely a sports type of park. So
what was the name of the park?
Jesse Owens Park.
Jesse Owens Park.
Yep.
Shout out.
So
I love it. Okay.
Yeah. I grew up on the east side of Chicago.
East side, okay.
And that was a park for like tennis, and there was a playground, and the traditional like football, baseball field. And my mom, just as a way to keep me busy, would get the free passes from the library and take me to the zoo, the Shedd Aquarium, the museums.
Yeah.
And so constantly being in those spaces really just opened up my mind to, I guess, like natural history. And I had this huge interest in animals. So I thought I was going to be a veterinarian.
Okay. That was originally your idea.
Yeah, either a veterinarian or a marine biologist, because I love the water. I love the Shedd Aquarium. I love dolphins. And
were you the only one though? Like, were you like the only Black girl in Chicago that was into this stuff, or did you have like a clique of like the nature squad? Like, what was it?
I wish, but no, I didn't really have a lot of people that were interested. I think the first time I met other Black people who are interested. Well, not even interested, but just doing nature-related things.
Yeah.
It was like right before I went off to undergrad, and I did this program called Fishing Buddies.
Okay.
And their whole goal was to introduce like inner city youth to the outdoors.
Okay.
And so we were getting paid, and that was the first I had, right?
What?
Exactly.
So you had money to the mix. You're like, oh, I can do this for a living.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
right.
I was like, wow, it exposed me to a whole different side of things because, you know, as a kid, if you're interested in animals, they're like, oh, be a veterinarian.
Right.
But you just aren't aware of all of the different career opportunities and just different things that you can do if you have an interest in the outdoors or in nature or in animals. Exactly. So like everybody in that program wasn't even interested in nature. They were just like, oh, we getting paid.
Are we getting a check?
I could do this.
Sign me up.
But I was like, oh, I get to play outside and I get paid?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I love it.
I can do this. Yeah.
So this program was your first taste to not only the fact that, hey, you could do this as a thing, like this could be a job and you can get paid. How did you even hear about that though?
I think this was baby researcher me, I guess.
Baby researcher,
yeah,
okay.
My mom was very insistent that if there was something I was interested in, then I need to look up how to do it. Right. So I was like, oh, I think I want to be a marine biologist or, you know, a veterinarian. She's like, well, you need to find programs that's going to give you that experience because I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So, you know, just doing some Google searches. So I did programs at the Shed Aquarium, and then I can't remember if it was me or my mom who found the Fishing Buddies program. Yeah.
But that was it when you found it. This is before you went to undergrad, and you went down south for undergrad, right?
I did, Tuskegee University.
Tuskegee, all right. HBCU in the building.
I love my HBCU.
All right. So why did you even choose Tuskegee? Why Tuskegee? And I'm assuming it had something to do with the programs that were available?
It did. And it had a lot to do with my mom. She was a very influential person in my life and just helping me understand the cost of higher education.
It can be costly, for sure.
It can be. I'm a first-generation student, so my dad didn't go. My mom went to undergrad at Illinois State, and then she had me, so she ended up, dropping out, going to community college, being a non-traditional student. So she was like, if you want a certain type of life, you have to, figure out how to get there. Right. And so I got a full ride to Tuskegee.
All right, now full ride. Come on, now full ride.
Yeah. So
and that was one of a kind experience, I know.
It was. I mean, I got accepted. I applied to 13 schools.
Oh, and,
wow. Okay. She was like, you need to go whoever's giving you the most money. That's where you're going. Yeah. I felt like I didn't really have a choice in it. And I'm glad that she pushed me that way because it really changed the whole trajectory of my career. Like, I have no idea who I would be without Tuskegee.
What was pivotal when it comes to your college experience? Because you not only grew, well, in terms of who you are now, like, you got into, like, environmental justice, birding, like, was some of these things a part of your college experience that kind of shifted you in that direction?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I went to Tuskegee, entered into Tuskegee as an animal science major. Okay. Was learning a lot about domestic animal agriculture, and I felt that it wasn't quite right for me. And honestly, I feel like being at Tuskegee, first of all, it was just a completely different environment. It was rural.
It's the South.
It was the South.
Hot and muggy, right?
Very different climate, different people. Yeah. Like, I was, like, used to being able to, drive 10 minutes and be in, like, Target or Walmart. Now I'm driving 30, 40 minutes to get to Target, Walmart. So it was different for me in that aspect. But
with, like, the birding and, like, the interest, were those extracurricular activities or what were those? Yeah,
I joined Manners, Minorities in Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Related Science. And that really helped me. It provided me a ton of volunteer opportunities and just kind of broadening my idea of what was possible. Okay. But even just beyond that, I feel like at Tuskegee, I learned about the importance of, like, volunteering and giving back to community. They had a huge focus on extension. Okay. And so just doing programs where I was taking people into
going out
the
into
forest
the community.
And,
okay.
Yeah, teaching people about archery, like, just teach people about conservation and really making that connection. I learned how to appreciate my Blackness and that was a huge thing for me.
Very important.
Being around other Black people who were high achieving, who had goals and like
intelligent and like
that was my first time. Everybody had, you know, a plan. They had something they wanted to do. And being around those type of people, it puts you in a different mindset. It pushes you to go further.
Right.
So it was just a really positive experience, learning more about just the history of us in this country.
Right. What George Washington Carver over there? Yeah.
George Washington Carver,
Tuskegee
Booker T.
Airmen,
Washington,
everybody. That's a lot of history. But how did you get into like birding specifically? And like just define birding, because you are, if anybody found you online, they would see that you definitely are a birder. So like, how did you get into that? And let's know a little bit about that real quick.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I got into birding probably because it was, I'm not even going to say because it was easy, because that's not true. During one of my second internship, my first internship as an undergrad, I was at Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge. Minnesota.
Okay, you were definitely.
So from Chicago to Alabama to Minnesota.
You were spreading your wings for sure.
I was going.
No pun intended. Okay.
I mean, it was an opportunity to learn and explore the world. Like, how often do you get paid to go and learn about the stuff that you want to learn about? Like that, for me, that was a huge thing. Like college opened up this huge door for me. Birding opened up a whole bunch of doors for me. Okay. Just to be able to travel and explore and get paid to learn. So
you applied for this program in Minnesota. And that was birding? That was a birding program?
So it was through the Student Conservation Association. Okay. And I was hired as a visitor services intern. Okay. And being in Minnesota, not knowing anything about the ecology, the landscape, anything, one way for me to learn about where I was and engage the visitors was through birding. So we had this huge observation window, and we had, there was a bird feeder out there. So I was just learning about the birds. Yeah. And there were folks who were there who were already super excited about it. I mean, this refuge was a migratory hotspot. Oh. And I just remember people, talking about, indigo bunting. Oh, you have to go see this little blue bird. Everyone comes, they drive for hours to come see this little blue bird. Yeah. And I was like, what the heck are y'all talking about?
You were a leader, right? You were like, okay.
Okay. How could birds be that interesting, right? But when I was there, I was 15 minutes away from the Mall of America, but I was seeing bald eagles flying over my head every day. I was, just seeing sandhill cranes and different ducks and just all types of wildlife that was steps away from the Mall of America. Yeah, and it was mind-blowing for me. And after that, it just kind of slowly removed the blinders a little bit, and I started noticing birds a little bit more everywhere I went. Yeah. But I didn't really get into birding until grad school, where I came here and worked on a project.
North Carolina State University.
All right,
go Pack. That's what we having kind of. Yes. All right, got you.
And that's where I started really exploring the differences in bird diversity in the city. So just going into different neighborhoods and watching birds with the Triangle Bird Count Project.
All right, well, listen. All right, hold on. So birding, because honestly, I'm probably where you were at that point, because you already dropped names of birds and stuff and whatever you said. And I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. But you also said something that's going to bring us to the segment we do called Pass or Fail. You literally said something about it was easy, but then you caught yourself and said, no, I'm not going to say it was easy. All right. So let me ask you this. This is our segment called Pass or Fail. And so in my mind, I'm sure there are levels. But it does seem like birding is easy. And that kind of tipped my hand a little bit. So pass or fail. A person said, birding, I know about birding. They download an app and they get the bird sounds and they just go on their back porch and they start playing. And it's a little wooded area and then they're taking pictures. When it comes to birding, is downloading an app, sitting on my back porch or going in the woods and playing that app on repeat. Does that pass or that fail when it comes to birding?
So I'm going to correct you a little bit. So, you're halfway there, right?
Okay.
You're halfway there. So it's not going out and playing the bird songs from the app. So I think the app you're talking about is called Merlin Bird ID. And so it's a free app. You can download it. And one of the really cool things about it is that it will record the sounds around you.
Okay, so it records. Okay.
Yeah, so you can go out and sit on your porch and have the app recording, and it will pick up on the different bird songs and tell you what birds are in your backyard.
So that's cool. But if I'm
cool.
just like playing stuff, that's a fail. Sometimes she told me I failed if I'm not.
I tried to give you
You tried to give me. Listen, I'm not tripping. This was hypothetical. Because of course I know.
Halfway there.
I mean, come on. I know bird ethics and stuff. You know what I mean? Well, not really, but that's why you're here.
Yeah.
But that's not legit though, right? It's not legit if you just go download something from YouTube and just play bird calls and then hopefully get like that's just kind of
that would be a fail. So so we don't really want people going out and playing the calls because that can disrupt their behavior.
Right.
And so playing those bird calls, it can cause a bird to think there's an enemy in its territory and cause it to behave erratically or. A lot of times when you see people playing those calls, the birds will come right up, and they do that to try and see the bird. But if you already don't really know what you're looking at anyway, it doesn't really make sense to do it that way. Instead, download Merlin.
Record the environment. All right. And she's giving us the formula for how to pass, right?
Yes. I'm trying to give you the formula to be successful. So you download Merlin. You can go on your back porch, and you press sound ID.
Okay.
And then it will start recording the different sounds. And every time it hears a bird, it will pop up and it'll give you an image of the bird.
Yeah.
You can click on it to find out more about the bird. And so that is a really good way to kind of get your foot in the door to birding.
All right.
If you don't want to, let's say like maybe buy a bird feeder or put
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're getting a little more advanced here. All right. By the way, does Merlin sponsor podcasts? If y'all sponsor podcasts, you might
Cornell Lab of Ornithology. If y'all trying to sponsor this podcast,
I'm saying, y'all
let us know.
listen, from the mouth of the guru herself, right? Like, listen. So, all right, bird feeders. All right, so let's talk about it then. What makes it a little harder than, like, why would you say it's not completely easy?
Oh my God. Well, one, because there are a little over 10,000 species of birds all around the world. So it's a lot, right? Yeah. And birds differ in size and shape and just environment, like where they're found, how they sound. And it can be really hard because there are these really tiny, tiny birds, like 3-4 inch birds.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why migration can be really frustrating. That's why I got turned off to birding my very first time in Minnesota.
Right.
I went on a bio blitz, and first of all, I was out there. It was like I was the youngest person there. I was the only Black person there. And I just didn't feel like anybody had any patience with me. Every time they were like, oh, look, there is a yellow-throated warbler or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, it's just leaves on the trees.
Right.
And you're just seeing the wind blowing the leaves. It's like, I don't see anything.
That's frustrating. Like, yo, everybody see this up for me? Like, what's going on here?
Yep. And then they had like this spotting scope. So they would like put a bird in the scope, but then the line was so long and I was so young and didn't have any like courage to go to the front of the line. So by the time I got there, the bird was gone. And I just, Did
you ever fake it though? Be like, oh yeah, that was awesome.
Absolutely not.
You were like straight up, yo, I didn't see nothing. Like, what's going on here?
I was extremely frustrated. I left. My very first bird walk, I dipped. I went because I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel like, anybody was even trying to assist me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the conversations that were being had were, I was able to be a part because of the age gap, the age difference.
Right.
So I ended up going mammal tracking with this volunteer at the refuge, and he sat down and showed me, like it was just us. He was very, patient and just taught me a lot of stuff that I felt like the birders weren't doing. So my first experience bird watching, I actually left and decided that it was not for me.
They almost lost you.
They almost lost me.
So that you bring up a good point because, the average, at least statistically speaking, bird watcher is an older person, not a Black person, right? Affluent person, right? Because they got to buy like good binoculars and all those things, which can contribute to the fact that, there's underrepresentation when it comes to Black women in this space. So how have you learned to kind of help bring more people like you into this world, right, as a Black woman in STEM?
Well, I think a big thing of that is exposure.
Okay.
Because I had no idea about bird watching. I always thought animals were cool, but similarly to not knowing about the different career fields that are out there, you just don't know until someone shows you.
Yeah.
And so that first that first experience is really key because it determines whether or not you want to continue on with something, right? Like the first time you try something, it can go amazing or it can be horribly wrong. And it completely deter you from doing that thing again.
Right.
And so one thing that I try to do is, so I lead bird walks here in the Triangle.
Okay.
I lead bird walks at Dorothea Dix Park.
Yeah.
I've done partnerships with, the city of Raleigh and, the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And so I try to expose people to birding in a way that's fun, it's memorable. I try and keep their expectations manageable. So they're not thinking like, oh, this, I'm going to see all these birds. Right. It's like that may not, I tell people all the time, like birding is hard. You may not get your eyes on anything, but that's okay because it's a skill. Like being able to track something with your eyes and then bring binoculars up and refine that thing in the binocular. Man. And then you have to and then it's constantly moving because it's looking for food or, I feel like that'll give me like a headache too because you're looking at a very fine image through the binoculars, but then it's like moving. So you really got to get good. Yeah. Coordination and all that. Even. It takes a lot of practice. So I encourage people to come out to my bird walks where I have them locally. Yeah, you told me I got to be there. I got to come through. You have to come. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Y'all got free food? Like what we... that's coming. It's coming. All right. Let me know when the free food. I might think about showing up there. Yeah. No, that's a good point because you think about the cultural differences and what brings us to events and what are the things that are going to get us to stay. Boom. And that's part of inclusiveness. It's part of Hey, I love it. And speaking of that, like you are the co-founder of the Black AF and STEM Collective. Yes. And Black Birders Week. Mm-hmm. All right, I love it. So this is how I became aware of you because we didn't just bump into each other. Even though we're in the same area, we didn't just bump into each other in the store or anything, right? Like you're online doing your thing and, STEMedia is very active online. So tell me a little bit about the Black AF and STEM Collective, Black Birders Week, which I understand was launched on the heels of something that had national recognition. Tell us a little bit about that story. Yeah, so Black AF and STEM originated as a group chat. Okay. It was a group chat that was created so that Black people in STEM could have like a safe space, like a space to be able to either, complain about the microaggressions or ask like, am I crazy? Right, or is this, or it's just to have somewhere to share those cool experiences. Like if you are a nature-minded person and you don't have friends who are nature-minded, like sometimes you could be like, oh my God, like I saw like this bald eagle fight and people who are not into birds, they're going to be like, who cares? Right. So you gotta find having commonality. A community to share those the highs and the lows with is really important just for, keeping us in STEM. Like having community is so important. Right. So it was a virtual space, a group me for a very long time. And then after, May 2020, there was a lot going on that year. A lot of people have heard about the Christian Cooper incident. Christian Cooper, Central Park. In Central Park. Yeah, recap that real quick. So a protected area of Central Park called the Ramble. Christian Cooper, New York City Audubon board member, Black man, well-respected birder, was out there birding and came across a white woman with her dog off leash. This is a protected area, for birds and wildlife. No dogs are supposed to be off leash in this area. Right. And so... he confronted her, asked her to put her dog on the leash. She refused and, said that she was going to call the police and say that the Black man was, threatening her. Yeah, and all that got caught on camera. All of it got caught on camera. Yeah. And so it was just kind of very eye-opening. And a couple hours later, like George Floyd was murdered. A couple of hours later? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't realize it was so close to each other. It was the same day. Get out of here. Wow. Yeah, so everyone in the group kind of saw the two different outcomes that could have happened that day. And we all just kind of were thinking about the experiences that we had even had, doing outdoor research or, working as biologists and just conservationists, et cetera, in the field. That didn't get caught on camera. Right, exactly. Right. Like I've been followed, by a woman with her dog, because she didn't feel comfortable with me doing the triangle bird count in her neighborhood. I've had colleagues who, have come across, people with guns or people who had the cops called the cops on them
right.
while they're out doing their field work. And so just all of these incidences and knowing that, one, that outcome could have been a lot different depending on, if he didn't have video evidence or, what have you. And just knowing that something similar could have happened to any one of us was really what pushed us to just bring awareness to the fact that racism is not just isolated within the, the institution of policing. It's really within every aspect
everywhere,
of our
even
society.
out looking at birds.
Even in the outdoors. So it really, the cool thing about it is that it transformed into from this event that was about, like awareness and showcasing the fact that Black birders exist and that we have expertise and knowledge and all of these things to, reclaiming our joy in outdoor spaces, building community, and really focusing on, us.
Right.
And centering Blackness in birding.
And being comfortable as Black birders. I love it. And hashtag Black Birders Week.
Hashtag Black Birders Week.
All right, y'all make sure you follow the hashtag. And you do it every year now, right?
Yes.
Is it around the same time of the year?
Yes. Same dates every year, May 29th. That same span of time, May 29th through like June 3rd.
Yeah.
The dates themselves kind of change, but it's that same week every year.
Listen, I see it online all the time. I be feeling left out sometimes for sure. I need to go.
Listen, local events.
You persuaded me in front of the people. I don't know. I might just make it happen. So here's the thing. I want to ask you. You mentioned the triangle bird count. What's that really quick? Is that a form of? And I'm gonna double question real quick. Is that a form of citizen science? Okay. Break down that.
So it's a form of, I'll use the term participatory science, which is really just an umbrella term for all of the different ways that people can contribute to science, like the public. Yeah. And so it's a local project where they're looking at the diversity of birds in the triangle. So anyone who can identify like the 25 most common birds can register, like look online, find a location that's near them that needs to be sampled. They can go out, stand outside for 10 minutes and record what they hear and what they see. Yeah. And that's it. And you're just really just helping to track the diversity of birds in this area because there's a huge gap based on what we know. We don't have a lot of information about where the birds are in like low income neighborhoods, in minority neighborhoods, because of who is doing the birding. Yeah. So a lot of the work that I do right now, my research focuses on, where the gaps that we have in birding based on who is going to collect it. Yeah. So people will go birding in the places that they're comfortable. Right. So if you have a very specific, demographic that's going out and going birding, then they're only going birding in the high income places, at the very nice parks or the places where.
Therefore, we only know about those areas too.
Yep.
But we don't know about the birds in the hood, right?
Exactly, right? And they are there.
They're there.
They're
right?
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a platform called eBird, I think.
Yep.
Is that where people upload the information that they see?
Yes, that is the most popular. It's a global platform, and you just have to create an account, and it will help you keep track of the birds that you're seeing. But then on the other hand, your data gets uploaded to this database. Yeah. And so it can help scientists like me be able to figure out, like what are the areas to conserve for migration? Like what are maybe there are important stopover habitats in the hood. Maybe there are places we need to preserve in our communities that are important for birds. Yeah. And then we're putting in more funding. We're getting better resources in our community. And all of this for the birds, but really it's for the people.
And that's why I like you say that, y'all. She said, you all can do this. Obviously, you citizen science. You don't have to have a Ph.D. And you're working on a Ph.D.
I am.
Right. So, but we can help. We can help her and people, scientists like her, better understand this. But the thing is, there's an intersection, and maybe you could talk about this. There's an intersection between like environmental justice and even social justice and conservation. Can you talk a little bit about that intersection as you see it?
Oh, yeah, that's such a loaded question. I think one good way to think about that intersection is kind of what I said before. And really thinking about, okay, let me start over. So people think that we're taught that science is not biased.
Okay.
But that's not true because people do science.
Right.
And so we bring our own perspectives and, our stereotypes and all of the personal
baggage.
Yeah, our position. Yeah. Our perspectives and the way that we think about the world, we bring that into our science. And so, depending on who is doing the science, that determines what questions are being asked, what how much funding is being put towards certain topics. So I really like to think about the intersections of nature and social justice and environmental justice, because you think about access and what people are exposed to, what they have access to in their neighborhoods, and how that impacts who they become in society. So, if you have access to parks, if you have access to healthy food, if you have a safe place to go for a walk, all of those things impact what you can do, who you can be, and how you think about the world. It helps to frame your views versus if you don't have access to those things, maybe you don't have maybe you don't think the environment is important because you've never had access to it. Your family doesn't spend time
There was
outside.
no park by your house.
Yeah, there's
you just
no park.
didn't see a park. Yeah.
Okay. So there's that aspect of it, thinking about access and our just ability to exist and find joy in those spaces.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of it when it comes to health and the environment and, pollution and where these plants have been placed.
Right.
I grew up maybe 10, 12 minutes from the birthplace of the environmental justice movement in Chicago. So it's called Allgill Gardens, the Toxic Donut. It's just this Black community in Chicago that's surrounded by landfills and factories and all of these just pollutants. And so the people in that community just were having these extreme rates of cancer and people were dying. And it all came back to the environment. It's because they were living in this community where the water, the soil, the air was all polluted. Yeah. Because these corporations were putting landfills and factories and power plants and all of these industrial zoning literally surrounding this community. And so I like to think about, those intersections between social justice and is this who deserves to have access to, it's a human right to have access to fresh air and clean water and all those things. Right. But because of the history of this country and the history of the world, people have, everybody doesn't have equal access to things. People who are on the margins or have less power are going to be exposed to more pollutants. And
you can see this not just in how a person is treated when they're out and about, but you can see this in terms of how a city is laid out, where the resources are going, even down to what people feel needs to be preserved versus, hey, we can get rid of this.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I decided to do geospatial analytics, because it's...
Hold on now. We got slow that down.
It's a big word.
Geospatial analytics. One sentence definition of that really quick.
I look at data patterns for the Earth. So geo, Earth, spatial, where things are laid out in space. Yeah. And analytics, I think about patterns.
Patterns, the data, the information from that. I knew that, but I was just trying to make sure.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously.
No, it's very hard. Every time I say it, people are like, wow. It kind of stops the conversation. The conversation is there. And I'm please no.
But no, the reason why I love it, because you have a very real passion for activism, I see, right? But you're approaching it in a very scientific, an incredibly impressive intellectual way, right? So talk about, obviously you have then you can go back into sort of your approach to it, but then also zoom out a little bit and say, why should anyone consider a career of, I don't know, I'm just going to say environmental activism, right? Talk about your specific approach and then maybe zoom out a tad.
Yeah, I think my passion for this really is because of where I grew up. Okay. And thinking about what I did not have access to, and wanting future generations to have access to that, and also wanting us to know about this field and that opportunities exist here. Yeah. I think that people should care in general about the environment and and be willing to fight for it because we all live here.
Right.
If we want to keep living here and we want things to be okay, for future generations, for our kids, kids, and things like that, we kind of have to care.
It's not just a political argument, as some people try to make it, right? It's a stewardship, I like to think of it as.
It is. And I think, whether you want to look at it from like in a religious standpoint or a environmental standpoint, like some people think about it as we were put here on this earth to be stewards of the earth and to take care of it. And maintain it, and we haven't done a great job of that thus far. And then if you look at it from the scientific side of things, or like we are a higher kind of being when it comes to things around the earth. And we have opposable thumbs, and we have the ability to take care of the earth.
And
so we should.
impact it because what's it? Just to get a little geeky here, right? Spider-Man, to whom much power comes much responsibility. So we have power as just human beings, right?
Yes.
And you're also bringing in the fact that it's not even evenly distributed. It's not equitably paid attention to.
Right.
So for a person who's saying, I feel you, Deja, I feel you too. Like, I'm the only person in my community that seems to be, first of all, even interested in this. But now you seem to have given me a deeper why I should go into it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, I don't know, maybe 3 tips or 3 skills a person should keep in mind if they're saying, "Hey, I want to make a difference in this vein in my career."
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Number one, I would say be flexible.
Okay.
I think I have deviated a lot from my original path. Remember, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian or a marine biologist, just like out there swimming with the dolphins and, snorkeling all the time. But when you're flexible but you keep your main goal in mind, like you are able to find different avenues to get to where you want to go long term.
Right.
So definitely be flexible, but stick to your goals.
Right.
I would also tell people, gosh, that's such a good question. Like, if they just want to be in the environment in general.
Well, not necessarily environment, but you about to get you're working on a Ph.D. Right now. They want to go far in STEM. They want to get maybe a degree or just a career in these areas of science, but they also want to, sort of apply it in the same way that you are doing it. Like, what are some of those other things? Does the person need to read a lot? Do they need to become, experts on history in the process, or what would you say?
No, I think people just need to be open.
Open, okay.
So I know I said flexible, but
flexible and open, all of.
Yeah.
But are there technical skills that you would maybe throw in the mix that have helped you?
Ooh, well, I've transitioned fields so many times that I've had to learn as I go. So like what I had to do, the skills I had as an ecologist, like that just kind of formed my overall thinking. But what I have to do now as a geospatial analyst, completely different. Like I had to relearn. I felt like I was in kindergarten again, like having to relearn everything, having to learn how to code.
Okay.
But I think focus on those transferable skills for sure. So knowing how to, this sounds dumb, but like knowing how to work with other people and just kind of like, sticking to your guns, like not letting. Oh, that was a bad analogy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just like allowing, but no, like not letting other people like take you out of who you are, right?
Okay.
Like, so I think we're often told that like you can't control what other people do. You can only control your own actions.
Right.
And I think that's really important because when you're in this space, when you're in a space where you are either like the only one or it's not a lot of you, there's always going to be people who are like trying to challenge you or try to make you feel like you don't belong here or you're not supposed to be in this space. But don't let all those outside thoughts and opinions like influence where you go because you can't control what other people think about you. You can't control like what other people, like how people respond to your activism or anything like that. But one thing that you can do is just, like focus on how you respond to things, like being kind. And so like your character and your personality is going to get you so much further then, you know, like it's going to get you a lot further, and like being open and flexible and like adaptable.
Right.
It's going to get you a lot further than just like having this long like resume
of skills. Right. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, if you're a jerk, no one wants to work with a jerk.
I mean, the jerks, they ride to the top.
Oh, somehow. But you're not advocating being a jerk, are you?
No.
Okay, all right.
No.
I feel you. We have to deal with them, though. But I guess, and I love what you're saying because it definitely applies and it's transferable. And I guess on the technical side, you talked about, you know, data and learn how to recognize patterns, maybe being able to kind of analyze data. That seems to be a technical skill that's a part of what you're doing now as a geospatial analyst.
Yeah. I would say, so a lot of what I do right now with being a geospatial analyst is in open source software.
Okay.
So there are a lot of free programs out there that exist to teach you about, you know, how to code in Python, SQL, R. Like, just there are so many languages out there. And so there are a lot of free resources. So like having a traditional education isn't the only way to get towards your goals.
Okay.
And so like everything that I do right now is in open source software. It's stuff that you can look up on YouTube and take classes on in order to get where I am, you know? So it's,
oh man. So you mean tell me I have to pay all that tuition? I pay, well,
it'll be a little bit harder for sure.
Right. And it's not as structured, but you know, that's probably another conversation for another day right there.
Yeah.
But listen, I know there's no doubt that if we had waited just a couple of months or whatever, we would have been saying Dr. Deja on this podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
Before we conclude, I just want to do something really fun too, because I don't really know a whole lot about birds you see in the urban space, but I just kind of put some down, and maybe I'm gonna do a this or that. Like you tell me which one, this versus that, and if I go off base, look, you can pull me back in. All right.
Yeah.
And whichever your answer is, tell me why. Cardinal versus Blue Jay.
Oh God, that's a really tough one.
Okay.
Blue Jay.
Blue Jay. Why?
Because cardinals are really mean, and if you ever have a chance to like handle them with mist netting, their beaks are so big. If they bite down, it hurts extremely bad. Ooh. They're also very territorial and aggressive, so they will like fight their reflection a lot of times. So sometimes you'll see them kind of like knocking into a window or into your car mirror or anything like that.
So you're not feeling the Cardinals are jerks, basically, what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Pigeon versus crow.
Crow.
Crow, why crow?
They're so smart. They're intelligent. They know how to use tools.
Yeah.
They problem solve. They will, use cars in order to like crack open walnuts and different things.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
they'll throw it out in front of the car, then the car run over it, and it's like, good luck, car. And then they go, that is smart. All right, cool. All right, here we go. A song sparrow versus American robin.
Song sparrow.
Song sparrow. Why?
I'm not a big robin fan. I think all the robins, they work for the CIA.
What? So when we see robins, we gotta be worried about being spied on?
Yeah, I'm really just kidding. So there's this campaign that's talking about like birds aren't real.
Yeah.
And if there was one bird that wasn't real, it would be a robin. I think American robins would be the one candidate that could be CIA drones, because when you see a robin, there's not just one. Like if you look a little bit harder, you'll see another one. And then all of a sudden, and don't let it be fall, because like all of a sudden you're gonna see like 10, 12.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded, right? Like
you're
walking down the trail. They're following you.
Robins are the ops, man. Like, yeah, listen.
I'm just saying.
Hey, we on to y'all. All right, woodpecker or hummingbird?
Oh, gosh.
Another hard one?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, God, I love woodpeckers. What hummingbirds represent is really awesome, but I'm going to stick with the woodpecker.
You going to stick with the woodpecker?
Yeah.
All right, why woodpecker? What gives it tip the scale?
Woodpeckers are really cool. They're one of my favorite groups. I love the pileated woodpecker, which is the largest that we have in North America. Their tongues wrap around their brain in order to help them to prevent from like having a concussion and getting CTE when they like bang into
I don't know how they do that, but yeah. So okay, there's a biological.
They're pretty cool just in the ways that they get food. Like their adaptations are pretty cool. Hummingbirds are really pretty, but we only have one here in the eastern U.S. But hummingbirds, that's a really tough matchup because hummingbirds can fly backwards.
Oh, they can. So let me do my last one. I'm going to keep hummingbird or like a barn swallow, like those swallows.
Hummingbird.
Okay. All right. I had to give a hummingbird a W.
Another chance. Yeah. Hummingbirds are a little bit more magical. Like swallows are pretty common. And so that's like what makes them cool is you can see them in a lot of different places and like watching them swoop and twirl and stuff like that. It's like aerial acrobatics. But hummingbirds are like little green fairies.
Yeah.
It's like, they're so small and they're so fast. Like sometimes you get a glimpse of them and you're like, did I see a hummingbird or was that a figment of my imagination?
Listen, this has been a great conversation, and we're going to get ready to wrap this up. But we like to ask sort of a time travel question, and this is along the same lines of, words of wisdom and advice, right? If you had an opportunity to go in a time machine and to go back, right, and see Deja in Chicago pre-Tuskegee, you know what I mean? And you had to give, one piece of advice, a single sentence of advice. And I'm actually a double part, so that's backwards. And then if you travel in a time machine to 5-10 years in the future from now, you can leave like a time capsule message to yourself. What sentences would you say for each of those cases?
If I were to go back in time and give myself some advice, I would tell myself to don't be afraid to be different and don't be afraid to change your mind. I think a lot of times we get stuck on, like, I have to do this one thing. Like, I thought I had to have one job my entire life, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. You can change your mind. You can decide that something isn't for you,
right.
Even if you thought it was. Or you can switch programs in the middle of a program, or do what's best for you. So don't be afraid to switch it up.
Right.
And then if I could look forward and give myself some advice, I would tell myself to stay true to my goals, don't get distracted, and be kind to everyone you meet. I think that's something that like COVID really taught me, because you never know what somebody else is going through. Like we're all kind of going through things, and I think COVID just really opened up that window to the fact that like everybody has their own little things going on. And so just to always kind of be kind, and that's going to get you so much further than, like be kind and maintain your networks.
I love it. That's a great way to end. And shout out to future Deja. You heard what past Deja is saying to you, right?
Girl.
All right. So that's some accountability right there. That's some meta accountability. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This is a great conversation. I can just do the whole, this versus that, this bird versus that bird for a long time.
Yeah,
right? I might just hit you up one day and just ask you, hey, what about it? What I learned. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. This was great.